are taking you 5 days, well, we'll say 4 days into the future for our January 14th, 2025 Palmer City Council meeting. And Happy New Year for 2025. We had quite the light show on New Year's, very early on New Year's Day. I hope everyone had a good holidays. For our meeting, we've got quite a few items kind of on our agenda. We've got what's called a consent agenda. And in that consent agenda, there's 4 different items that are kind of regular business. They're budgeted. They've been done before. So they're in the consent agenda, and that's the golf course, the garden services contract, the visitor center contract, and the Palmer High School resource officer contract. And those are, if the council wants, they can pull them out of the consent agenda. But if not, those items will be approved when the agenda is approved. We've also got minutes from previous meetings in November and December. And after that, we've got some public hearings. There's a Homeland Security grant for a generator, and that's for the PPD and dispatch. That's Homeland Security. The feds, through the state, are trying to set it up where we can help. They're helping with a grant to purchase a generator that will take care of our public safety building in the case of an emergency, and we need the generator to be running. There's an ordinance change public hearing for amending the Palmer Municipal Code for executive sessions, and that'll be a public hearing, and also an amendment for the 2024 budget for the year-end employee bonuses, Reso 24-005. Then we have some action memorandums, and in that we have contract approval for museum services. There's also for RFP for study and for parking and pedestrian access in our central business district. And then a 2-year lease extension for the temporary library and storage. Because our library, we've been out of our building and the library for a couple of years now, and that's for a 2-year extension for that. And then at the end of the meeting, we've got a couple executive sessions, one for potential library settlement litigation and annual review of the city clerk. And I want to let people know another thing that's come up is the boroughs asked for help from the cities. The borough was participant of the opioid settlement, and the state of Alaska and the borough were, and many states and municipalities were participating in that, and they have started receiving money for the opioid settlement. And they've even done some grants. I think the payments for funds that they have, well, it could be up to a couple $1 million for the borough. But in this last year, 2024, they had like $300,000 at that time to distribute. So they put together grant programs to get nonprofits to apply for grants for helping with opioid problems. But they could only do it for things like education and emergency services. And so they don't have health powers. And so they're essentially asking for a limited temporary health power from the city or from cities to allow them to give out money in those grants to nonprofits to deal with things, dealing with the opioid crisis, which could be for rehabilitation and as well as prevention and those things. It sounds really bizarre, and when you get federal, state, and lots of other entities involved, not to mention some lawyers, it gets a little more tricky. But the meeting, I've had a couple meetings with other cities and mayors to kind of have a discussion and try to find out more about it. And when they talk about it being a limited and temporary transfer, and so it's written very specifically. So in our case, the city of Palmer would give the health power for the distribution of money from the opioid crisis through to the borough to give out to organizations within the borough. And that's something we didn't participate in that opioid settlement. So we have no ability to get that money to share with anyone. So we'd only be transferring that power to share that money. So it's very, very specific. But we're having some more meetings. There'll be more coming up. It's one of those things that it's a little tricky to follow, but I think it sounds like it's written very specifically to allow just the transfer of that money to due in grants and for the borough and for organizations working in the borough. And I think it's over $2 million that the borough could be looking at coming in for that. Anyway, but we have some more meetings and we're going to set up for some staff and some council people to learn more about it. We'll probably have a presentation at Palmer City Council coming up sometime as well. Another thing coming up is in my report, I gave a little more information about the Sister City program with Soroma, Japan. It kind of started back in the 70s when a couple ham radio operators, one in Soroma and one in Palmer, started talking with each other and dialoguing, and that they kind of got all excited and started talking to their mayors and to the cities. And so in 1980, we set up a sister city relationship, and we sent people over, and that we've had people go over somewhat regularly. I think the regular city has gone over. I think they look to try to do every 5 years. Soroma might come to Palmer one in 5 years and then another 5 years later. So back in 2010, we had our mayor and Mayor Combs and his wife, and I think it was Council Member Molesky at that time, traveled to Soroma and visited there and shared. And then we had in 2015 had, I think, about 20 different people coming from Soroma to visit Palmer and share in activities and events. And we were scheduled to go in 2020, but other things happened in 2020. It was a bizarro year. And so we've had discussions with them, and they're hoping that we would come. They were looking forward to hosting representatives from Palmer, from the city of Palmer in 2025. So we're looking at doing that. It would be, I think, in July, and we'll be having some discussions. I think that'll probably be on the 28th of January. We'll probably have items on the agenda and be discussing that as well. And one interesting event coming up, I think it is January 30th. I think that's a Thursday. Out at Raven Hall at the fairgrounds, there is the Matsu Transportation Fair, and there will be representatives from various organizations ranging from DOT, City of Wasilla, City of Palmer, to 557, Alaska Railroad, etc. We'll have different booths, and I believe it's from 4 to 7 that day, and people can come and kind of get more information about what these different entities are working on for in the future. So, this has been Steve Carrington, Palmer Mayor, taking you 4 days, we'll say, into the future for our January 14th